So, as you think about this, how do you think about it in terms of investment for private
Hmm.
investment versus public investment? And I ask this in the context of countries like the United States that have really seen a surge in commercial investment from individuals, and we'll get into some of that later in the conversation. But there hasn't necessarily been a groundswell of support from the public taxpayers. Now that's just one
Hmm.
country. This is an international endeavor. But I wouldn't say that the public governments of the world have really shown much of an appetite for this investment, and it might be because we're seeing commercial investment. So, as looking at this from a scientific perspective,
Hmm.
do you think the entrance of commercial players to this space has been a net positive, at least in some ways, for what we've learned from it? Or do you think that because we have commercial interests now, it has actually diminished the public investment and the public benefits that could come from space exploration?
Hmm. That is a fantastic question because, yes, commercial actors are coming in to the space, if you will, and that has both benefits and potential threats to scientific exploration. The benefits are that companies like SpaceX, for example, has come in like in decades past. It has revolutionized rocketry, where now you can get things out into space, whether that's a satellite that's going to orbit the Earth and study climate, or it's a fleet of communication satellites, or it's a spacecraft that's going to go out to another planet. That can be done much more cheaply thanks to innovations that have come from private industry. Now, I will say though that the key difference is that private industry is never going to be incentivized economically to actually pay for scientific missions. You're never going to see SpaceX or Blue Origin or any of the other big commercial companies paying to design and build a scientific probe. So something like the Juno spacecraft that is currently studying Jupiter, that is something that is only really ever going to be paid for with public money because it doesn't bring any return on investment in the traditional business sense. The benefits that a mission like that yield are knowledge and perspective and discovery, and those are things that are of value to the public, and they're things like big infrastructure projects that only the government really pays for. Um, so I don't see private industry ever taking over space science. There's no reason for them to do it economically, and that's what drives private industry. It has to be profit. That being said, there is an economic return on investment for a government to pay for these things. So when, like, I know the numbers for NASA, at least. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head for other space agencies, but I assume it would be similar, where every dollar that the US government invests in NASA brings back $3 to the US economy. And that's because the money that NASA spends is going to pay the salaries of highly skilled workers. It is going to um, supporting American companies that build the actual components of spacecraft. It feeds back into the economy. Um, that wouldn't be the case for a company, but it works for a government. And if I may go on, in terms of the threat that the rise of private industry in space poses, I think it really has to do with public opinion because, as you said, citizens have to be supportive of public investment in space. So, right now in the US, we are seeing the president's budget request for 2026 calls for a huge cut to NASA, including about a 47% cut to NASA's science budget. So, that is just a massive, 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 devastating cut that would set American space science back decades. If the public doesn't care about that cut, it'll go ahead. But if people care about it and speak up, Congress could be incentivized to reject that cut. This is kind of getting into complicated policy stuff, but I think that the threat that we see from private space industry, specifically space tourism, the billionaires and the celebrities going to space, is that the average person who sees that thinks this is this is not for me. This doesn't represent me. This does not benefit me. This is bad. This is garbage. And so they might lump that in with NASA and just think space is space, space travel, space tourism, space exploration. It's all space. It's all the same thing. So then when they see NASA's getting cut, they might think, good, fine. I don't want to spend my money on sending billionaires to space anymore. And so I think that threat to the public opinion on space exploration and space funding is really serious.